Okay, so cleansing. So what we're up to, the colon cleanse. The reason why we would want to do a colon cleanse, or why I like doing a colon cleanse and recommended it to everybody who we recommended it to, is because our colon is the primary area of detoxification in our body. 85% of our detoxification happens in our colon. Does everybody know what our colon is? Do you guys know what your colon is? Okay,
I had
great.
a colonoscopy last year.
So you know what your colon is, yes. Yes.
No, I haven't.
Your large intestine is the other name for it. Comes up this way, well, it goes the other way. Comes up here, across, right below your rib cage, down, and then to the exit. And that's why, part of why it's a big part of your detoxification system, because it's a main way your body exits things out of your system. So that's important. We live in an ever increasingly toxic world. You know, the unfortunate truth is that. It's so much so that in the last 25 years, there's 20,000 chemicals that have been registered with the EPA that didn't exist 25 years ago. And registering with the EPA means nothing as far as testing for safety with humans. Most of them aren't. One, they just don't have the resources to enforce any testing, and two, there's very little regulation about it anyway. So there's all these chemicals out there in our food supply, in the air, in the water, and all that stuff. And so we live in an increasingly toxic world. Also, as a population, most of us have colons that aren't working at 100%, besides the fact that we live in this toxic world. So it's kind of like two things working against us. And the reason for the colons not working well has to do basically with our modern day diet. Things like cooking all of our food, eating processed food, absolutely. And what you were just talking about with the sugar and that kind of thing. So eating sugars, carbohydrates, really any food that's not really fit for human consumption, which is a lot of the food, or so-called food, that we're presented with. And I always point that way because there's a grocery store right over there. Not them in particular, any grocery store for the most part. Most of the stuff there is not really fit for human consumption as far as I'm concerned, meaning a lot of things we eat, like grains and dairy and things like that, which you don't eat while you're on the cleanse, they cause our body to not work well. And one of the areas that we suffer the most is in our colon. So aside from the processed food and the overcooking our food, the other thing that works against us is that we eat, as a culture, almost no natural forms of probiotics. You guys know what probiotics are? And then tell me what probiotics are. Anyone? Tell me.
Oh, we have to tell you?
Yeah, you got to answer questions.
Well,
you can't just
act
like you know. Exactly. Okay.
Thank you.
Good answer, good answer.
I think our septic tanks need it too.
Yes, different ones though. Different probiotics. Let's keep that in mind. Not the same ones.
Things just pop in my head and fall out my mouth.
That's a good answer though. That was a good answer. Keep it coming. No. So, yes. So our ancient ancestors, how we developed genetically, all our how we evolved over a million plus years. It's estimated that those people ate 1 million times more bacteria every day, beneficial bacteria, than we do. In part because, again, I'm going to point over there, but there's really nothing in that store, the average grocery store, really nothing that has any beneficial bacteria. And I say anything. I know there's things like yogurt, which if you ate, you could eat yogurt all day and you're still not creating the proper environment in your gut. It's not horrible, but it's actually not the actual quite right strains of bacteria, because what we co-evolved with was not dairy, so we didn't co-evolve with dairy strains of probiotics. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So yogurt is better than nothing, but you're comparing it to nothing. So, I mean, anything's better than nothing, right? So the way our ancient ancestors did it is they ate food without washing it, which means they got a lot of dirt in it, and dirt is full of microorganisms. And that's how we sort of genetically co-evolved, was with soil microorganisms. I wouldn't recommend eating dirt, or not washing your food now, or eating dirt, because our dirt is a lot different. I mean, that's, a lot of toxins end up there. So I wouldn't recommend not, and your food gets handled by a lot of people and stuff. It's not, out of your own garden, if you wanted to not wash it, go right ahead. But in every other case, I wouldn't do that. So beneficial bacteria, that's what they are. They do a lot of work to help our body digest food, gain nutrients, and remove toxins and waste if they're in proper balance. So our colon's not just sort of generally functioning well because of overcooked foods and processed foods, and then having an improper environment, or flora, in there leads to our colons not functioning well. And that's over a lifetime is what we were finding. So you could go, grab just a random person off the street, bring them in. If we could look in their colon, I would guarantee you that their colon would not be 100% functional. I don't care who they are. And so when you have a non-functional colon, what happens is your body doesn't exit all the waste. Some of those toxins and some of that solid matter, mucoid matrix they like to call it, stays in there. And that can stay in there for years/decades without moving out, because once it sticks and another layer gets plastered on, so that inner layer, those inner layers, they're just sitting there, staying there, because the colon isn't getting healthier generally, it's getting less healthy, so it's getting less efficient and less efficient. So now we have more toxins than ever coming in. Our natural detoxification system is overtaxed and not working well. So we still have toxins in the blood, right, which is a problem. Sometimes can be potentially fatal problems. So now our body kicks into overdrive. Our liver kicks in, tries to do all the work because it's a detoxifier too. But the problem is it has nowhere to send those toxins. They still can't get them out of the body because the main exit is now smaller and less functional. So then our body does sort of a last-ditch effort, the only thing it can do, which is it stores those toxins now in our fat cells. Yes, because especially around our midsection, because that's long-term storage. And so it's like, the deep freeze, right? And what can happen is that people will find, because you may have heard this, I hear this, people working to lose weight. They diet, they exercise, they're doing all the right things, and they lose a bunch of weight, fat, get muscular, all that stuff, but they just can't seem to lose that last stubborn 10, 15, 20 pounds, whatever it is, around their midsection. And the truth is because when those fat cells are storing toxins, your body will not release those toxins back into your bloodstream because it would be dangerous. And so it'll actually start to break down muscle tissue for energy, because you're starving it of energy by not eating and exercising, which is how you lose the fat. But now it won't release those fat cells because it doesn't want the toxins floating in the bloodstream. So sometimes what can happen when people get their colon working well and get that detoxification system back online, that stubborn 10, 15, 20 pounds will go away because it's actually not there to store energy. And so as soon as there's an exit, so your body's like, send those toxins out and the fat cells will go away. That's not guaranteed, and it doesn't happen with everybody because there's all variables. But what will happen is now your body won't have to store those toxins there, so it can release that.